So when we started, if you notice, it was just you, and then you moved from it being just you to using freelancers, and then from freelancers, you had like 1 to 4 employees, just a handful, then it turns to 5 to 9, then you're crossing the double digits. You go from double digits into now, we're looking into double tens, which is 20 to 49 employees, okay? So we've gone all the way from it being just you to having like your own little community, right? And so what is the optimize phase? Okay, it's 20 to 49 people, that's what we're looking at. Your role in this optimize phase is you're a leader now. So prior you were a manager, now you've stepped into, you must be a leader because you cannot manage everybody on your team. You have to be able to lead people on your team. And what that looks like is having 2 full layers of managers. So before you had the managers that were managing individual contributors. Now you have managers that manage individual contributors. Now you're atop of all of those. The amount of businesses that get here, only 2.1 million. So it's really like looking at everything you see online and all the people that you hear about having all the success, 2.1 million businesses at all get here. So like if you are here and you're watching this and you're like in this phase right now, like congratulations, because that's freaking awesome. It's insane. And it's hard to do because in general, once you get to this phase, you cannot do everything yourself. Things become a lot harder because you have to work through people to do them. So that being said, we are going to dive into what does product look like at the optimized level.
And also, if you're connecting from stage 5 to stage 6, when we're saying team like layers of managers, the title of the manager would be different. So like we were directors with managers and then individual contributors, and now we are the one leader above directors, manager, right? And so you'll notice that in the beginning, the first few phases, because I don't want to say it's made up, but to a degree, like researcher, starter, doer, trainer, like there really aren't terms for that because it's so small of a business. But basically from 2 stages ago until now, you're more or less the actual title, you're above the highest title in the business. So right now you have directors and you're leading them. And then next level, it's like, okay, well now we're gonna need leaders, right? So a little foreshadowing there. But now let's begin with product. So these are the goods, services, and results that you deliver. And so at level 6, 20 to 49 employees, the constraint is that you're improving 2 products. Remember, because we have 2 products now. Product improvements slow down. All right, because you're like, oh shoot, you're balancing 2 plates, right? And so to graduate, you need to install an incremental product improvement process for both products. All right, so this is what that looks like. So you list all the problems with both products, then you estimate gain, cost, and risk. So this is the same RICE, like there's a number of different frameworks you can use here, all right? But like RICE is a common one, which we talked about earlier, which is like reach, impact, confidence, expense. Here, it's what's the impact, which we're saying is gain, what's the cost, and then what's the risk. Almost all of these have the same 3 to 4 elements in terms of the decision-making process, which all of this is, which Layla referenced earlier, is just prioritization of resources. And what you'll find is a common theme as you kind of go up the entrepreneurial ladder. You listen to Steve Jobs talk. You listen to Elon talk. And the best entrepreneurs, like at the highest levels, all they talk about is focus. Is focus and prioritization. And so if you see this as a repeated theme, it's just that resources expand, and so you need to recut, reprune, reprioritize. And then resources are gonna expand again. So this is more of a cycle than it is a box that checks. It's something that continues to repeat over and over again. And so at this point, you have your estimations. How much is it gonna make us? How much is it gonna cost us in time? How likely is it to occur? And you could add how many people will this affect? You can also combine that together, but fundamentally, will it affect a lot of people or a few people, and how much, right? And then we re-rank them by the highest impact, lowest cost, and then we prioritize fixing them one at a time. So I want to really, really nail this one. A lot of people don't like this concept of fixing things in sequence, right? They want to do, we have multiple people, like we have them all work on different things concurrently. But here's the thing. In my experience, this is like, it's so big, is that you have to be able to say, that's a fire. We really do need to fix our conversion rate. We really do need to fix sales. And yet we are not going to talk about it as a company because it's not the priority. Now, is it a problem? Yes. But is it the biggest problem? No. And so here's the cool thing, is that if you tell the whole team no one's going to work on any problem but this problem, guess how fast that problem gets solved? And so here's the thing. If let's say we wanted to solve all 4 problems at the same time concurrently because we have 4 teammates, I will guarantee you that if all 4 people work on one problem and they feel the urgency because they're like, that fire's still going, you're like, yep, we better solve this one quick then they solve that one. And then all of a sudden you're like, great, we tick and tied this one, it's done. We don't need to think about it. And now all 4 resources are dialed into the next one. And so if you think about it like a magnifying glass, it's like you have this sun and you're trying to burn a hole in the paper. Most businesses just stay too far away and they just warm the paper up. They never actually break through. You have to concentrate all that effort, and you would be amazed, and I'm telling you as an entrepreneur, you will get addicted to the rate of progress you will make if you actually say, no, we're gonna do this in order, even though we can hypothetically in our minds think we can do it at the same time. The urgency of the other fires will force you to the first one so much faster because no one's allowed to do anything else. And then by the very nature, their whole schedule is clear except for that problem. And you'd be amazed how fast problems get solved. And the last piece here is that if you have, from a prioritization perspective, sometimes you get lucky. And so if you have a contingency-based priority, which is like, well, we can't walk through the building until we open the door, right? And so if you have one of those, then it actually makes prioritization easy. Well, no matter what, we have to do this first. But a lot of times you don't have contingencies. You have a shared pool of resources and many problems that all need to get fixed. And so I'll put this one last piece that Layla taught me, and it's honestly like really changed my outlook as an entrepreneur, which is why I'm hitting on this so hard, is the difference between missed opportunities and problems. Missed opportunities have stressed me out my entire life because I'm like, oh my God, we're losing all this money. But you're not losing all this money. You could be making more, but you're not. But there are problems that currently exist in the business. And the more I have focused all of my effort on solving problems, not pursuing opportunities, the more my existing opportunity expanded. Because the thing is if you do pursue those opportunities, instead of solving the problems, you actually scale both. You scale your problems and you scale the new problems that come with that new opportunity that you didn't know about. And now you have more problems and even fewer resources to deal with them. Whereas if you tick and tie all the way up, you actually keep things contained and you grow by getting better rather than by doing more, which you'll notice optimize being the theme here. That is the theme at this stage.
You know, I think in Alex's instance, what you relate to is the missed opportunities versus problems. What I relate to more when it comes to prioritization, what I struggle with, somebody with my personality type, is wanting to have a perfect business, wanting to be a 10 out of 10 product, 10 out of 10 marketing, 10 out of 10 sales, 10 out of 10 CS at all points in time, and therefore creating competing priorities. And so a lot of the times for somebody in business who is a little anal, you have to learn that you need to let things be imperfect. And that there are no perfect solutions, because even the solution that you deploy will create other problems. And so a way that I have been able to prioritize things is by allowing things to be imperfect and not making the goal to have a perfect business, because likelihood that you have a perfect business, the only businesses that are perfect probably exist on paper, right? Or they go out of business. And so, or they make no profit. And so realizing that business is not perfect and that things are going to remain imperfect and that you cannot solve all problems at once has been what I would say one of my biggest breakthroughs as an entrepreneur, has just been realizing that if you try to perfect everything at once, everything becomes mediocre.
And so looking at this from a feature prioritization, so every single product has features, services have features. These are the things you do that you bundle into your service, right? Or whatever you sell. And so there's kind of 2 methods you can think about. So method 1 is you list your features in a community and have them upvote them. I don't personally like this, but if you're just kind of not that smart, you can just do this, because they will make a judgment based on their existing understanding of the resources that they don't know exist. And so if you know that there are technological capabilities, or there are things that you could do that they don't know you could do, then that's where you miss out on the big order of magnitude jumps. But I have seen some businesses do this well. I think it works better in businesses where there's very little technology, in my opinion. I have seen some tech businesses do this, but in my opinion, I think the most innovative businesses, they have a deeper understanding of their business than the customer does. And they're like, what if we did this? And then the customer's blown away by it. But it's like Elon's going to probably release a phone, and it's going to be because of SpaceX, because he's got more satellites in space than anyone else. But thinking, wait, how is the space company going to make a phone? But it's because no one would ask for the phone because they don't understand the technological capabilities required to make a phone and the hardware requirements in order to do it. So 1 is that you can just ask the audience. Not a terrible idea, but it's, I would say, mid. Method 2 is that you list all the features you have in your product and ask. And this one I like a lot in terms of pruning. All right, so to be clear, this is about elimination rather than what we're going to build next. Here we say, if I have these 10 things that are associated with my service or product, if I got rid of all of them but one, which one would you want me to keep? And so it forces the customers to say, no, these are the things that are most valuable to me. And so one of the things, we actually learned this with school, is that the number one reason people cancel memberships and subscriptions is overwhelm. People want to over deliver to their customers, but in so doing, they just overwhelm their customers. And so they just keep adding things because they think more is better, but better is better, and more are very different things to do. And so the way you make things better oftentimes is just by pruning things off in order to let the tree continue to grow and get healthier. That's why in gardens, you prune the tree. That's how it grows. It's how you make it stronger. That's how you make it better. And then on the flip side, you could say, if we kept everything but one thing, which thing would make no difference in your life? And then here's the kicker. Once you have, okay, these are clearly the top 2 or 3 things that matter the most, and these are the 2 or 3 things that matter the least, delete the bottom one, and then don't say anything. And the reason we do it that way is because you don't want to say, hey guys, would you be okay if I remove this? Everyone's going to be upset because it's just, you're taking something away. But most people don't even, like you can look at it, like no one's even using this, right? Or if they are using it, maybe they're not getting value from it. If they all ranked it lowest, and I'll tell you the story behind this. We did this exact survey, and one of the features we had like 11 or 14 things, whatever. It was a big list of the things we were doing at GymWatch. And the thing that came back that was surprised to me was tech support. We had a 35-person department handle tech support because it was one of the big things that happened. Gym owners didn't understand how to make websites, pixels, ads, whatever. And so it came back that the lowest ranked thing we had was tech support. They said, if you got rid of it, I wouldn't care. We got rid of a 35-person department, which was incredibly painful for us in terms of, it was like a layoff, but not really. The company was healthy, but just no one valued it. And nothing happened. Churn stayed the same. Customer CSAT score stayed the same. Nothing happened. And so if you do the deletion, then wait. If no one says anything, congratulations, you're making more money for doing less, and you have literally a better product. And if people do respond, before you immediately add it back, just think to yourself, who are these customers? Are they the type of customers that I want to serve? And long-term, is this what I want to grow? Do I want to grow this part of the base, or do I not want to grow this part of the base? And so sometimes you do have strategic cuts where you're like, we're going to lose 5% of our customers on this, but overall the product or service is going to be healthier. That is how we're thinking about through optimization. So it's a combination of what new things are we going to create in terms of how we're going to improve the product, and then what things are we going to delete in order to also improve the product. So it's both through new things and also deletion. And so this is what we graduated from. Improving 2 products slows down their improvements. And so we have to prioritize and say, this is the only thing we're doing. We will solve this problem first. We will work on the rest once we've solved this one. And then from a deletion perspective, you take the bad stuff out. And so that completes product. And now we move on to marketing. So how you tell people about your stuff. So at optimization level 6, you're doing 2 to 50 employees. The constraint here is that ads aren't converting as well to colder traffic. So CAC goes up. So before this, we couldn't convert because LTV wasn't high enough. Here, CAC is actually continuing to go up, which feels similar, but you have different ways of solving them. All right. And so to graduate at this level, we implement the ad assembly process to increase volume. So we have to just make more ads. You're advertising in more platforms, in more places. You're spending more money per day, ads fatigue faster in those audiences. So we need to have more variety. All right. So this is what the ad assembly process looks like. And so the way that we do this is that we write out 50 hooks, 3 to 5 kind of meaty parts of the ad, and then 1 to 3 CTAs. And you'll notice the reason that this is so disproportionate is that if you quote David, or I'll quote David Ogilvy, he said, after you've written your headline, you've already spent 80 cents of your dollar, which means that only 20% of people are even going to get past the hook. And so this is where you have the most variety, because you could literally run the same meat ad and just keep recycling hooks and get different people over and over again. That's how you prevent the banner blindness. Actually comes from the hooks. So the hook is by far the most important thing. If 80 cents of your dollar for advertising is getting spent there, then 80% of your time should be spent there. So this is how I think about hooks. So hooks are, I like looking at my past ad winners. So in the beginning, if you have never had an ad that worked, then you just make up 50. But at this point, you should already have ads that are working. So you look at your past ad winners. You say, cool, how do I just do more of that? Then you look at your content winners and say, oh, there's hooks from my content. I wonder if I can use that hook in my ads. One of my top performing school ads right now is actually the hook from a content piece that was, hey, when you're 85 years old, you're not going to wish you had fewer crazy stories. That's from a content piece that then became a top performing ad. The next is other people's ad winners. So if there's other ads that you see, I love taking hooks from completely disparate industries. So it's like, there's a hotel chain that uses this hook, but it could totally work for what we're doing. We just have a different need afterwards. So I love the, artist steal or whatever the saying is. I love stealing like an artist. All right. Other people's content winners, same concept, just on content. And then finally, I use this as my last kind of resort, which is I just research the ad library. So most platforms have ad libraries that are public. And so if you see an ad that's been running for a month, 2 months, then you know that that's probably a winner. And so you can look at different people in the industry, you can look at people outside of the industry. And I just like looking at top performing ads, period. Because personally, I don't like looking like I'm looking at other people's stuff. I also don't like being influenced in general. I kind of always want to just do my own thing. And so grabbing from, a TikToker, TikTok shop for lashes, and then I realize that I can use the first part of their hook with the second part of someone else's hook over here, that's where I think the magic really happens. But I still do the other 4 first because these are in order of risk. The likelihood that a past ad winner works again, super high. The likelihood that your past content winner works to the same audience, pretty high, right? And so we're just going in decreased order of likelihood for the hooks. So once we have the hooks written out, then we have basically different ways of stating the offer. More or less, that's what this is. And so you think about the 8 value drivers, which we had 4 for the value equation. They just have mirror images. And so you have your dream outcome, which is here's the good stuff, but you also can depict the nightmare situation. Like, you ever seen an ad where it's like black and white and they're like, it's like it's a nightmare in terms of the meat of the ad. Like, what's the situation that they're describing? Then you have risk or perceived likelihood. So how can we show the risk of not doing this or show the low risk of taking this, our option, right? Then you have speed. So it's like, okay, other ways are really slow and delayed, whereas our way is faster. And then how much work and effort and sacrifice you have to do it with other ways or by not doing our solution versus how easy and sacrifice-free it is for you to take our thing. So I like to look at both sides and think more good stuff, less bad stuff, and we push that all the way through. In terms of the themes of the ads, I either make ads that the meat is about the product or service, so it's just like talking about what we do. The other is talking about the people who have done it. So this is the testimonials. This is sometimes employees talking about the product. Educational is more talking about the explanation behind how it works. Narrative and emotional ads. So these ads are like, you think more like cinematics, if that makes sense. Like that's kind of like the essence of these ones. And then non-human ads. So these are like cartoons, memes. These are the types of ads that work really well here. And so all the way through here, and especially with this product or service one, you're thinking about it, how do I demonstrate the product? How can I demonstrate the service? So if I'm a marketing agency, one way I could demonstrate it is leads. But what do people really want? They want a full gym. And so some of the best ads that we had talking about our service for Gym Launch didn't talk about our service at all. We just showed a gym that was full. And we're like, that was us. And that works better than saying, look at all the leads we got, people. Because that's what they really wanted. And so there's a famous marketer saying is that people want holes, not drills. They buy the drill to get the hole, but they fundamentally just want a hole in the wall that meets a certain requirement. And so we want to talk about the hole, not the drill. All right, and so then finally you have the CTAs. So once you have their attention and then you deliver the value and explain to them why they value drivers, right? And we make it about one of those 5 themes. Then we go to CTAs, which is we tell them what and how to do it, when to do it, what they get for doing it, what happens next, which is optimal, and then demonstrates what it looks like and what happens. At the end of almost every ad I make, I have what the next page in the funnel looks like and showing them click on the button that creates the form that submits. And I like to show them because that way it's congruent. So they see that and then they go to the page and it's exactly what they expected. And so it's congruent. That little thing can give you a significant boost across all ads. And so at this point, now you've got a machine. You're assembling ads at this point. You're not making ads. You're assembling them. You're putting the pieces together because what happens is when you have 50 hooks and 3 to 5 pieces of meat and 1 to 3 CTAs, you have 150 to 750 ad variations you make per week. And anyone can do 50 hooks, 3 to 5 pieces once a week. But this amount of ad volume, this is what it takes to scale. Because the thing that's probably limiting your ability to scale your advertising is not your market. It's that your ads just aren't good enough. And so to convert at the coldest levels, you just have to have that much better creative. And so at this level, in Optimize, all we did was get more out of the resources we have. Again, the theme is optimization for here. And so we go from ads not converting well to colder traffic and the CAC going up to implementing the ad assembly process and doing that weekly at a minimum. And so at this point, we transition to sales, which is how you get people to give you money for stuff. And so at this level, the constraint is the closing efficiency on the core product drops and becomes inconsistent. And refunds go down, but so do closes. And so to graduate, we have to install sales training systems and individual coaching in a team cadence. All right, because now you probably have a team of people. And I'm not going to get into too much people stuff because we're going to do that in a separate scaling framework. But this is what the actual, what must occur should look like. And so big picture here is that we like to set the frame that no one is perfect. And that means that you as a director or a leader or a manager, you need to tell your team, I'm not better than you are. I'm gonna role play with you and I'm gonna mess up too. All right, because if you feel like you have to look perfect to your team, you're not gonna role play enough because you're gonna be afraid of looking stupid. So you gotta be like, dude, I'm gonna get in there, I'm gonna mess up too. We're gonna do it together, right? And so number one, sales training system, this is where you wanna start getting recordings in place of like, what do the really good sales look like? What does the perfect script look like? You wanna create a tone guide for the script. So what that means is if you have a script that you've got italics, you've got underline, you've got bold, you've got caps, and that can give you insight for the sales rep. Where do you slow down? Where do you speed up? Where do you ask? Where do you ask with a question frame? Like, is that really what you mean? You like dogs? Like, that's a question, or you like dogs. It's like, that's a very different statement, right? And so giving tone guides for where do we emphasize, where do we speed up, and then where do we lift or lower trail on our voice to become more compelling, right? And so that's what we do inside of the sales training system. Once they have the system that they all go through, then it's like, okay, well, what are the discrepancies from the people who come in? So this is where individual coaching comes into play. So we've got role playing with the specific deficiency for the rep. We typically do twice a day for the first week, once a day for the second week, and then once a week after they're productive. If someone isn't productive by the end of the second week, we strongly consider cutting them. Team training, so this is the individual level. And then team training, we still have the game tape. Remember, that's still happening. We have game tape just for sales only. So we have the full team, but then just game tape for the team itself. And on these game tapes with sales, the sales guy gets up and he says, here's all the things I could have done better. I learned this one the hard way. You don't want to get on and have people just tell that guy all the things they messed up. It's horrible. We actually did that. It was like no one wanted to get called. And so now the way it works is you get up, you go first, you say all the things you would have done better, and then everyone else says all the things you did right. And so you get public praise, and then you get to be the one. And what's crazy is most people, when you watch your own game tape, you're like, oh, I messed that up, right? And so that way you know if you watch your own game tape. And then after that, this then informs the specific training that the manager is going to do with that individual. Be like, hey, we're missing rapport. Let's keep training on rapport until we get it right. And then finally, the cadence. So weekly team, daily huddle, and then weekly one-on-one. This is once you're at maintenance. In the beginning, you onboard this way, but over time, you just get into maintenance like that. All right, and so this is what sales optimization looks at this point. Like you've got a team, and you've got to squeeze as much out of them as you can. We're getting more for what we put in. And so for sales, we went from closing efficiency on the core product drops and becomes inconsistent. Refunds go down, but so do closes. And we transition to creating a full sales training system with recordings, with scripts, with best calls, with game tape. We have individual coaching, and we get a team cadence in place so that the team can continue to tighten the screws and get better and better and better. And after that point, we move on to the customer service.
So customer service is how you get customers to refer, to retain, to review, and to resell. Okay, so 4 R's. And so at this level, churn increases due to the volume and new product, right? So you have another product, you also have more volume coming through the existing and now the new one, which creates more churn, right? And so to graduate this, you want to create customer segmentation by cohort, and you want to create activation points. So the first thing that we want to do is segment our customers. So an easy way that you can segment people is by when they sign up or the product that they purchase. Okay, so I'll give you some examples. So when I talk about by customer count, right, it's looking at the time at which somebody signed up. So if you're looking at, okay, somebody signed up in July, in August, in September, in October, in November. Here's why that's important, is because most of the time when something goes wrong, when churn occurs, we can figure out what did we change or what did we stop or start doing at the time that churn increased. And so what I look for is I want to segment customers by when they've signed up to understand what changed or didn't change or stopped or started at that time. So that's one of the first things. A lot of times people say, oh my gosh, we've got to fix all this stuff because of customer churn. It's like, let's find out what we stopped doing or what we started doing at the time when those customers came in. So an example might be, we might have added the second product, and maybe what happened was the CS team just wasn't on their game because they weren't fully trained on the second product, and that happened to happen in July, right? The other thing that could happen is we could say, oh, you know what? Interesting. The people that we signed up for gym launch in January had higher churn than people who signed up in October. Maybe that's because in January, everyone's all excited and they think, oh, I've got to sign up for the stuff. But the people in October were actually just really committed to losing weight. They didn't need it to be the new year to sign up. And so when you segment customers, you're going to learn more about why they will have churned based on when they signed up.
And you want to be able to put this is actually from one of our portfolio companies. You want to be able to see, okay, this is month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, month 5. So obviously month 1, these guys signed up this month, so we can't get to month 2 yet. This one only has 2 months. This one has 3 months. This one has 4 months. And so we can see, oh, you know what? We have a massive drop off between month 4 and month 5. Okay, what occurs or what doesn't occur here that should occur? And is there something that we can do to get people over this hump? And so whenever you have these points of churn that you can, once you have the data, it becomes much easier to identify these things. Is there something that we can implement 1 to 2 months prior to churn as an incentive to stick? Because if we know that churn happens at month 6, you don't want to give it at month 6. You want to give it at month 5 or month 4 because that's the average. It means that some people are leaving here, right? And so we want to push people through that hump.
So think about it like this, right? You look at when churn occurs. So the month at which it occurs, when they are engaged with your product or service. And then you also look at when they signed up for your product or service and what has occurred at each point in those times. Because when they signed up can set up if they succeed or if they fail at that point of churn. And then at the point of churn can tell you if there's something that happens in the 4 to 8 weeks prior that led up to that point. And so those are the data points that you want to look at when you're looking at customers.
And oftentimes people make the decision to leave 1 or 2 months beforehand anyways. And so you want to be a little earlier on it.
The other thing that you can do is you can do this by product. So you can essentially see, okay, let's take these customers. Let's also segment them by product to see, okay, what if we find out that our customers in our level 1 product always churn, like the highest point of churn is at month 4 versus our second level product, it's actually at month 10, right? And so what you'll see is that when you look at churn without segmenting by product, you're going to solve the wrong problems for the wrong people for the wrong product. And so you want to make sure that you're always segmenting it by product, by understanding even when they signed up. And then sometimes you even want to look at segmenting churn by rep or by CS rep. So what I mean by rep is you can segment churn by sales rep to figure out, is this churn coming from improper expectations that were set? And you can also segment it by who is their assigned CSM. So if your business is one where they have an assigned rep, an account manager, an account executive, you can also segment churn by that. And so the bottom line is that the more specific you can get to the data of the customers, the more likely you are to solve the actual issue that someone's churning. And you don't want to change the entire product or service if it's 1 sales rep, 1 CS rep, or 1 bad month that somebody had, or 1 poor month of onboarding. So you want to get as specific as possible so you don't make a holistic change for a one-time event. The next thing you want to do is you want to figure out activation, and you want to map out activation for your customers. So a lot of people, when they think about churn, they think about, okay, how do I stop people from leaving? Okay, so then that means that I need to fix, let's make it harder to cancel. Yes, let's hide the button, right? Worst thing that you could possibly do is make it hard to cancel. That's not how you solve churn. Now, that is what a lot of people do. I promise you that will just leave bad reviews for you because people hate when they can't cancel. They hate when it feels like this big amorphous thing. You don't know who to email. You don't know if they're going to email you back. You've got to make a phone call and leave a voicemail and then give your first baby to them. Like, nobody likes that. And so instead, what you want to do is you want to focus on being proactive so that you just prevent churn from happening in the first place. The biggest correlator to reducing churn is activation. Okay, activation is getting someone to engage with your product or service, meaning they actually freaking use it. Okay, and so we call this the 5 M's of activation. Okay, step 1 is you want to map the journey. Okay, so you want to outline the key milestones all the way from onboarding to ongoing delivery to understand the customer behavior. Okay, so what that looks like, if you Google customer journey, you will see it's all of the key milestones. It's the actions that the customer has to take and that your team has to take for the customer to realize value and to go through the entire process of all products. Okay, so it's all the steps the customer does and all the steps you do. So you might call the customer after the sale, onboard the customer on a call, send them an email, send them another email, give them a free guide, get them on a coaching call. While the customer might start measuring their metrics, start running ads, learn how to record ads, and so there's 2 journeys happening at the same time. And so both of those combined are a customer journey, right? And so oftentimes when you're mapping this out, I like to color code them. It might be that the actions the customer take are in blue, the actions that I take are in yellow. That's the first thing, map out the journey. The second thing you're gonna do is measure patterns. So what you wanna do is analyze, notice the theme here that is throughout all these videos, your best customers to find out which behaviors correlate with the highest retention and engagement. Okay, so who stays the longest and uses the product the most? what do they do differently than other people? Right? It's a really interesting question. Ask yourself. So an easy way that you can measure these patterns is by interviewing your best customers about what they do through the customer journey. So you would walk them through the customer journey and ask them if there's anything that they don't do or do that are not on that customer journey. That are not on that customer journey. Okay. And so once you've mapped that out, what you'll notice is that a lot of the times you will find that your best customers do some things differently. This is something we figured out in Gym Launch, is that we would pull in our best customers to do a focus group. And then we would find that the best customers often did a few things differently than the entire rest of our customer base. And then once we found those things out, we could implement those into the customer journey, which looks like this. Step 3, we make a hypothesis, right? So we identify the key actions or milestones that could represent the activation point based on those patterns of our best customers, right? So once we figured out what they do differently, we then make a hypothesis. Okay, it seems like 8 out of 10 of our best customers do these 2 things that the other customers don't do. So those 2 things might actually be our real activation point. Maybe what it is, right, is that our best customers actually all bring their operator onto a sales call. So in Gym Launch, what we found is that if somebody brought their operator from their facility onto the sales call and the onboarding call, the likelihood of retaining and staying longer was almost double. And so it could be something just as simple as that is a activation point. They bring in their partner to engage in the product. Step 4 is you're going to monitor results. So you're going to run tests to validate if these milestones actually drive engagement, conversion, and retention. So what does that mean? It means, hey guys, you let your team know, we're going to try adding in these 2 things as requirements. We're going to require that everybody bring their operator onto these 3 calls. Okay, and we're going to see if it affects churn in the next 90 days. So maybe if you're seeing that people churn at week 6, so you're going to say, great, we're going to try this, and it's going to take us 3 or 4 months to see if this affects churn, but we're only going to try these 2 things. And here's the key here, is if you change more than 1 or 2 things, I would even say more than 1, you aren't going to know what affects churn and what actually activates a customer. And so the key is to test one thing at a time. And I know it's annoying because it takes time to pan out, but I promise you, what's worse than not knowing how you fail is actually not knowing what creates success. And so the only way to know what creates success in your business is to test one thing at a time. So after you've done that, you modify your onboarding and offer, right? So once you've gone through this process, you're like, okay, this drives success. I have to bring the operator on the call. You're then going to optimize your customer journey to hit the real activation point, and you're going to integrate this into your offer guarantee to include the activation point if that's possible. So here's an example of what that might look like. So I onboarded with a financial software, and I'm guessing that they realized that activation meant that I had to consume these 5 videos, because in order to get me to activate, what I had to do is they said, you will get your first 2 months free if you consume these 5 videos in a live webinar format. So I had to be there at a certain time, 5 times, 5 weeks in a row, at it was 3 p.m. on Thursday, watch this recording, fill out a survey to get the 2 months free. But I am very certain that they know that activates a customer, because guess how long I used that software for? About 4 years, right? And why did I use it for 4 years? Because in each of those webinars that I consumed, I learned so much about how to use the software I would have never known if I had not consumed. And so that is an example of how you can then optimize your offer, right? Which you can say, and great, if you sign up today and you watch these 5 videos, then you can, and that goes to Alex and something that you would optimize.
Yeah, and you get a rebate that's associated with that, which then allows you to advertise the net cost post rebate in your advertising, just as long as you disclaim the fact that it's after rebates. If you've seen advertisements that say, free television, and it says after rebates, then that's how it works. It's because they want you to do certain actions.
So when it comes to customer service, churn increased due to volume and new product. So what we did is we segmented our customers by cohort, and then we implemented activation points by the product.
We acquire a lot of companies at this stage, optimized. They have 2 products, but everything's inefficient, and they need to grow by doing everything better rather than more. And so there was a company that we had where CAC was going up and the ads weren't converting as well. And so what we did was we just implemented the changes to help them optimize their front end. And so we tore up their entire webinar funnel, sales script, lead nurture process, and the close rate went from 14.1% to 34.9%. And ROAS, because this was an automated conversion process, went from 1.62 to 3.96. And so CAC got almost cut in half, and we increased how much customers were worth. And we did this by implementing a significantly better customer journey. And the renewal then went from 2%, which basically didn't even track, to 30% of customers, because customer success was having extremely intentional touch points rather than just having it ad hoc or randomly. And so profit went from 5% of this business to 30%. We 6x'd the profit of the business. And so if you are at this stage and you'd like to get to the next level, we have not only done it once, we've done it many, many, many times over the past however many years. And so two things. One, if you don't have a scaling roadmap that's personalized to you, click the button below this video, go grab it. Secondarily, if you already have the scaling roadmap and you're like, I'd love to have more tailored, individualized, industry-specific tactics on how to implement this in my business right now in the right order, then I'd love to have you out to a workshop. So if that sounds interesting, you can click around, I'm sure you'll find it. And otherwise, enjoy the rest of the video.
So next we have IT. IT is how you gather, store, analyze, and display information, okay? So at this level, when you have an IT department, right, you have new people coming in and old people leaving with IP, data, and access, okay? And so what do you want to do to graduate this level? Cybersecurity. I know, it's so sexy and everyone loves talking about all these things. I promise you, this is what most business is. It's boring. So cybersecurity, malware, password protection, and all those things for your employees, as well as onboarding and offboarding procedures. So let's talk about what that looks like, okay? Onboarding is having checklists and password account creation processes for every system with all your company credentials. So here's the key here. By this point, you should have that password protection tool. You also now need to make sure that every account that anyone signs up for is done so with their company email. This sounds so simple, but you'd be surprised what happens that you bring in that password protection tool, people don't want to use it, so then they use their personal emails to sign up for accounts instead. And so what you want to make sure is that when you onboard people, you only allow them to use their company email, and then with that email, they must sign up for everything with that. And there are actually tools that you can use to track by email to see every account that somebody signs up for. So even if they don't put it in the password protection tool, you can actually use other tools to track if they have other accounts they've signed up with that email. So I could go in right now and I could say, okay, let me see every account that Daniel has signed up for. And I could put his into the software and it can show me all the, the Pornhub and I'm kidding. All the accounts that Daniel has signed up for, and I can see that. And so that is how you want to make sure that you're onboarding people. The second thing that you're going to focus on is training, which is you want to have training for each system, for each of their use cases or role, right? And so what that looks like is making sure that for each specific department, you're training them on the cybersecurity and what's unique to them. This is going to look different for a financial department, for a sales department, for a CS department. Anyone who handles the money, anyone who transacts, that is something that is going to fall into needing a lot of training when it comes to this. Okay, so if you look at people in like the operations department, if we look at even like maybe people managing our facilities or like, managing our events or like, speaking with portfolio companies, they might not have to worry too much about this, but people that are facilitating sales, they're facilitating transactions, they're handling financial information, they're going to need training on how to remain compliant and how to ensure that we have proper cybersecurity protocols in place.
I'll give you a quick story about this. So when we had a vendor, we got an email that was like, hey, just FYI, can you wire, like we're switching our accounts, can you wire the monthly payment? And so for us, it was like $150,000 for this particular vendor per month that we were sending to them. And we got an email like 30 days later from the vendor being like, dude, what the hell? Like, why haven't you sent your money? And I was like, we always pay our bills. So like, that's, our shit's dialed. And they were like, started like escalating, calling us names. And I was like, dude, let's just hop on the phone. So I hopped on the phone with the founder and he's like, we did not get the money. And I was like, well, here's the wire confirmation. He was like, well, what's that account? And I was like, it's the account that you told us you wanted to switch to. He's like, we didn't switch anything. And it turned out that they had been spoofed by somebody else, had made an entire chain with eight of their employees, because it was a chain of our finance and their finance department communicating back and forth. And the wire had been sent to whoever, wherever else it had been, and it had gone through wire hell into all these different accounts. And so the good news was we, because of Layla, had already gotten a multi-million-dollar cybersecurity insurance policy. And so they also had an insurance policy. And so our insurances just basically duked it out to figure out who was liable. And it turned out, since they were the ones who had the data breach, not us, we were just responding to, it was from their domain. So it wasn't like, oh, they misspelled something. Like, it was from their email address. And so anyways, the TLDR is, these things are real. And for some businesses, losing 150 grand in 1 month might have been, even if it wasn't your fault, even if you did have the insurance, could be in 3 or 4 months something that would have destroyed the business because you didn't have the cash flow. And so I bring these things up because they are real things, and the more money you handle, the more of a target you become.
Which brings us to the last piece on this slide, which is offboarding. Again, if you can create the proper onboarding, the reason that's so important is because if you onboard people properly, where they're inputting their company email into that system and using the password protection, then when you offboard, you can do a one-click shutdown. So something that prevents a lot of people from firing people is they're so worried about all of the things they have access to. But if you use the onboarding properly and you actually use the systems, then you can do a one-click shut off so that when somebody goes AWOL, you have to fire them, or they quit, you can just boom, shut it off in one click by deleting their account from that system. What are the basic cybersecurity protocols? Okay, so if you are at this point in your business and you're going from 20 to 49 people, these are things that you actually need to learn what they mean. And so what I would say is this, I'm not gonna bore you with it. Screenshot this and understand what these are, because if you bring in somebody to help install these into your business, these are the 5 basic things that we're gonna wanna get. So we wanna have a firewall, something that monitors and filters incoming and outgoing things from our network, basically. We wanna have encryption, which is a process of encoding data to ensure that only the authorized people can read it. This would be for legal and financial primarily. Next, we wanna have multi-factor authentication. So that's like when you log into Google and they say they have to send you a text to your phone to confirm it's you. You're gonna wanna have that on multiple accounts for different people in the company. The next one is having software updates and patch management. So this is just the process of keeping software up to date and also applying patches and updates that fix security vulnerabilities. So actually, when you don't update software, it actually leaves you vulnerable, which is why it's important to continuously update the software. Otherwise, oftentimes, that is where you can get like a data breach. And lastly, you wanna have access control, right? And this is just, you need to have the least amount of people possible having control to, I would say, high-risk platforms. That's financial, that's legal, that's transactional, right? That's customer information that is confidential, to make sure that if at some point there is a data breach, you know it's only these 4 people that could have had access to it. And so you need to have a list of who has access to the most risky systems. Again, let's think legal and financial. When it comes to IT, you had new people coming in, you have old people leaving with data and with access creating risk. So you want to install cybersecurity protocols, malware, password protection, and proper onboarding and offboarding so that you don't have that risk and you can sleep well at night. Which brings us to recruiting, which is how you find and hire people to work for your company. Okay, so at this level, the number and type of roles that you need exceeds your current network. You can no longer ask your friends, okay? And so everybody who's good that you already did know has a job, okay? And so what you wanna do to graduate is you wanna learn to headhunt at higher level roles. And you wanna add in multiple interviews and interviewers filtering for different skills. Okay, so you're gonna notice some things that were from the last few levels here. The first thing you wanna do is you become the headhunter, right? And so outreach becomes more important because job ads typically don't deliver the highest level roles. Because think about it like this, you need a higher level role. It requires more skills, it requires more experience. That means that person is rarer to find, which means that person probably has a job because more people want them. There is less supply and there's more demand, meaning they are harder to find. And so the best people have jobs, which means that you're going to have to find a way to get their attention because they are not looking for you, you are looking for them. And so these are actually some examples that I've included that have gotten me interviews with some really high quality candidates. And so I included them there so you can look at them. Essentially, I have just introduced myself. I tell them some information about me. A lot of times I'm de-risking by talking about a track record, or I'm letting them know that I have a really cool role. And at the end of it, what you'll see is I also ask them always, by the way, if this doesn't work for you and you're not interested, do you know somebody who would be? And so it's actually really cool because I've actually gotten 2 people that are currently on my team hired by sending a message and then someone saying, you know what, this actually has I'm not interested right now and I really love where I'm at and all this stuff, but I actually have a friend who would be perfect for this. And then they give me that friend's information, and then that friend has actually worked out in 2 cases. And so the main thing you want to think about is you need to start reaching out to people. Now, the easiest way to do this, especially if it's for a higher level role, is you think, where do higher level individuals live? It's typically on a platform like LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, for example, you can pay to get LinkedIn Recruiter. You can pay to get LinkedIn Outreach. And both of those tools, they have different levels on them, allow you to pop up in somebody's inbox who is not your friend on LinkedIn. And so it doesn't matter if you have the audience or not. As long as you can craft a message that's going to get people's attention, then you can find people on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn allows you to filter for the type of experience, the type of role they have, the geography of where they live, and all of the other things as well. So it's a fantastic tool for doing outreach. And at this point, I will say this, you can reach out to people in your network, but again, you've probably exhausted at this point. And so you kind of have to move to doing this. The next thing that you want to move to is a 4-person, 4-way fit process. Okay, so before, remember we had in the prior levels, we had the 2-person, 4-way fit process. So the 4-way fit always remains the same. What we're doing is we're extending how much we're giving into each interview, and we're adding more people into the interview process. Because here's what's happening, is that when you bring in people with higher level skills, they're also better at BSing you. Because a lot of times the skills they have are presentation skills, influence skills. Those are things that you have to be able to see past an interview. And so when you're recruiting for higher level positions, you need to be digging in more and having more people in the process. So what does that look like? Is that you're actually going to segment these 4. One person will do the expectation screen. One person does an interview for culture. One person does an interview for skill fit. And one person does an interview for potential fit. So I'll give you an example. Oftentimes a recruiter does the screening for expectations. The founder or CEO will do the potential fit. And then you have 2 other leaders that will conduct the culture and the skill fit. That is how you can mitigate more risk when it comes to bringing the right people into the business. Because what happens as your business gets bigger is you actually also want to get the perspective of other people of that person. Because at this point you have 50 people, you have anywhere between 20 and 50 people on the team. You have other people who know what culture looks like and what culture on the team looks like. You have other people who are going to be working with this person, who are incentivized to make sure that they have the skills, because if they don't have the skills, then this person's job is going to be harder. And so you have other people that you want to insert into the process who are incentivized to get a good person. And then lastly, I would say at this point, you still want to be conducting what I call a potential fit. A potential fit is making sure that this person's career goals align with your goals for the role. After you've gone through this process, you can go into selecting, okay? Selecting is picking the right person, okay? And so that's what's the rate, aka the compensation that you're going to offer to them? What's the offer as a total package? And then how do you check their references? And here's the thing I will say to all of this. This piece, at this point in your business, you don't have more than 50 people. You should be involved in all management selection. You should be doing the final interview. And I heavily advise that you do. And I really heavily suggest that you approve all of these things too. Because think about it like this. At this point, you are making an offer. It is a more complex compensation package. There's going to be, and we'll talk about this in the coming ones, but there's going to be more things that you want to play with, and it's going to have to be more custom based on the person's experience and skill. And so because you reached out to that person, and because a lot of the times they have a little bit more leverage than you have to be very prudent in terms of how you present or how you select and what you present to that person. And then how you check for references. Again, as a role becomes more prominent in the company, the more prominent reference checking becomes. And so I might have only asked for 1 or 2 references for an individual contributor, but when I'm hiring for somebody for a manager or a director level, right? Because at this point I'm a leader, I've got directors, I've got managers, I might ask for 4 to 5 references, and I might spend 30 to 45 minutes talking to each. I want to ask the same questions to each of the references because I want to make sure that I have the right data to compare it with. But I will spend a lot of time talking to those people because I want to not just ask 1 question, but then ask 2 follow-up questions to every answer they give me. If it's like, hey, would you rehire this person if given the chance? And they say yes. I say, okay, why? And they give me a reason. I say, okay, can you tell me why that's true? Right? So you always want to be digging, not 1 follow-up question, but 2. And so again, what you notice the theme here is that we're going to go deeper into each one of these ways of understanding if someone's a fit. We're also going to mitigate risk by making sure a different person handles each one of these things. And then we're going to get really specific with our selection process, and we're going to be involved in it because we want to make sure that the offer that we present to that person is custom to them.
I want to piggyback two things on this. Number one is that this applies to the higher level roles. So it's not like the two-step that we had before is now you're like, oh yeah, now all of our individual contributors are going through a four-way fit. No, if you're getting frontline individual, like say it's editors or it's customer service or it's sales, right? You don't need to do all of this because it doesn't make sense. We're not saying we're going to change the entire process of the business. It's just that now we have a new level of person we have to attract, and the process to attract them is different. And to the same degree on the selection process thing, I want to just give you a cautionary warning here, which is that, there's a couple times in the portfolio we've had founders, who are like, this person wanted to negotiate their pay. How dare they? But it's like, no. Like, this is a higher level role. This is far more common. They're not insulting you. It's par for course. This is just far more standard. And so I'm trying to make you aware of this because if you are now bringing in directors, maybe even bringing in a leader above that, like the conversation changes, the tone is different. It's way more like you're having more conversation with them because it's a bigger bet for them. It's a bigger bet for you financially for both parties. And so it's way more like dating than it is like one night standing.
I might have 3 or 4 calls discussing compensation with somebody who's coming into a director or leadership level role because we need to make sure that it works on both sides. And honestly, if you can't talk about money on the way in, you're not gonna be able to talk about money during the entire time that they're employed with you. And so you might as well start with transparency on the front end because it sets the tone for the entire relationship. That being said, when it comes to recruiting, we have the number and type of roles that exceeded your current network, right? So you already have tapped out your network in terms of trying to get people to work for you. And so you have to learn a headhunt and you have to install multiple interview cadence with multiple interviewers, which brings us to human resources. Human resources is how you decrease the likelihood that regulators and employees sue you. Okay, so what does that look like? At this level, the constraint is that you cannot get higher level talent because they expect full compensation packages, benefits, retirement, etc. Okay, and so to graduate, you need to set up benefits, retirement, and advanced compensation plans. So this kind of goes with what we just talked about in recruiting, which is the reason it takes longer is because these are things that you're going to have included now. And so what does that look like when it comes to selecting benefits? I just want to give you guys a quick 5 points that will help you select the right benefits because I know this sounds incredibly boring. I actually think it's boring as well. It's also very important because though you may not give a crap about benefits, because I know I don't think you ever have. I think we don't even use our insurance, right? Many people do. They have families, they have kids, and they love the fact that they don't have to pay things out of pocket at the company they're currently at because they have amazing benefits. And so I want you to understand, just because it's not important to you doesn't mean it's not important to the people that you're attracting.
I'm gonna throw this in there. Business owners, benefits typically have a higher return than compensation. Hear me out. So it's like if you spend $1,000 a month for an employee to have insane benefits, it's $12,000 a year. And that may retain someone like an extra $40,000 a year in compensation. And so it's like you just make the trade for the money for them ahead of time and then you can include it. And so a lot of times it's actually a cost savings to you. This is just something that I learned because I'm always like, I tend to be very dollars and cents oriented. But I'm just saying you get a pretty good return on benefits because people value them more than the money it costs to get them.
So when you go about, you're like, okay, how the heck do I figure out what benefits I need, right? Okay, I want you to think through this as a process. The first is you want to assess needs. So identify the top benefits that your employees require and desire, okay? And then ensure they align with your budget and legal obligations. Obviously, so when I say budget and legal obligations, based on the size of your company, the state that you're incorporated, you might have obligations to give a certain type of benefit in a certain degree, okay? That's one piece and you need to look that up. You can find it on Google. The second piece though is identifying the top benefits your employees require. So if you have people of a lower age bracket versus a higher age bracket, they typically have different needs when it comes to benefits. And so what you want to understand are, in terms of what types of benefits are available, what's in highest demand based on your workforce. That's the first thing you want to understand. Like, what do people want, right? Is it, for example, at acquisition.com, we have a lot of people who are having like their first kids, right? And so they're building their first family. So they have a lot of needs for dependents, right? And so that is something that I keep in mind when I'm looking at assessing benefits is like, what are going to be the benefits for somebody's kids when they have kids? The second thing you're going to do is once you know that, and you're like, okay, I think this is the main thing that people want out of the benefits, and then these are my legal obligations, you want to analyze providers. Research providers based on industry. So the main thing you want to start with is what providers are popular for the industry of business that you're in. Are you software? Are you service? Are you medical? Are you tech? Are you all those things you want to factor into who you're going to go with. Then you want to look at obviously their experience, their reputation, and their technology. Okay, here's the thing I will say. It doesn't matter how good the benefits are if people don't know how to use them. And knowing how to use them has to do with having a good benefits portal. And so when you're analyzing providers, look at industry experience, look at reputation and reviews, and look at technology. The biggest thing that I've gone wrong on is picking people who have great benefits, but then the platform is so outdated that my employees don't even want to use the benefits, right? Because they don't know how, because it's so archaic that they're like, what the hell is this? This looks like a freaking, I don't know, from 1990, which some of them are from 1990. So that's what you want to do there. Then you want to appraise the plans. When you go with a provider, they're going to provide you with, here's the 3 to 5 plans that you could go with, right? And then you're going to evaluate those plans based on the type of plan, the cost, and then you're going to balance that with what you can afford, right? And value-add services, like they provide wellness programs, they have, health programs. There's all this stuff that people throw in nowadays that you can get based on the plan that you pick. What you want to understand is this. The biggest thing that you're picking is how much you're going to cover and how much your employee is going to cover when it comes to appraising a plan. You're going to have them give you sample plans of what it would look like for different people in your business. So my suggestion is when they give you the plans to appraise is that have them run a scenario for an individual contributor, for a manager, and for a director on your team so that you really know what would they be paying out of pocket and what would you as a company be paying out of pocket. Because just so you understand, when you get benefits, it's going to be anywhere between on the low side 15%, on the high side 25 to 30% of payroll that you're going to add on just to cover benefits. The fourth thing you're going to do is assess the support and compliance. So once you've picked one, you want to make sure that they are going to have your back when it means like they're meeting regulatory standards and they handle the administration. So right now, when you're from 20 to 49 people, this is where I've gone wrong in the past is I go with a provider and I go with a plan that has no administrative support, and then I have to hire somebody to do all the administrative support. And you don't want to have to do that when you're this small of a company. When you are big, you're going to have an entire department that handles benefits when you have hundreds and thousands of people. At this point, if you can outsource it to the benefits provider, that is the ideal scenario. Because I promise you, it is something that you don't want to deal with, you don't want someone on your team to deal with, and you don't have to pay someone an extra $80,000 a year in payroll just to cover administrating benefits. And the last one is adopt and adjust. So once you've selected somebody, you communicate the benefits to your employees, meaning you want to sell them on these benefits. Like when you present it to them, it's like it's somebody's birthday. It's a holiday. It is a thing. Because I promise you, you don't want to tell them about the benefits. You want to sell them on the benefits. Because most of the time, people underplay this. They don't talk about it like it's a big deal. You are increasing your payroll costs by 25% just by adding this in to do good for the people on your team. Right? Yes, it's going to attract talent and such. It's also going to help people and make their lives better. And so you want to sell them on that. And you want to make sure that you are constantly collecting feedback, I would say on a quarterly basis, about your benefits so that you can figure that out when renewal comes. Because essentially each year you get to determine if you want to stick with the provider, stick with the plan, stick with the amount of support that's provided. And so the only way that you can do that in a way that is beneficial for the company is to continue asking for feedback.
And you want those rates to be reappraised on an annual basis because, for example, I'll give you a real story. So one of our companies, smallish company, so like in this range, because of non-disclosure and HIPAA rules, the healthcare provider can't tell us as the employer who on your team is using the benefits and to what degree. But we had one employee that somehow was in the team and was spending $1 million a year in health costs. And so the thing is that it wasn't them, it was their spouse who had some sort of brain thing that they had to go to some very special hospital and get these very expensive scans that cost something in the neighborhood of like $25,000 every time they got a scan. And so what happened though was that just like you have a credit score, you have like a health score for your business. And so an insurer is going to look at that, or a benefits provider is going to look at that and say, oh, well, this is actually a really expensive company. It really just turned out we had one guy who was just unbelievably expensive and it wasn't even that person. And so, by the way, that cost still comes out of your pocket, which is tough. And this is what, like, I'm just being real here. And it's good that they don't tell you who it is. Because all of a sudden, if you had this one employee that you pay, $100,000 a year and it's costing you $1 million, it hurts a little bit, to be honest with you. But I bring this up to say, if in the future that person is no longer with the company, you want to have that appraised regularly so that it's like, oh, our health score is actually way better. And so you can give us the much lower risk rate than we had before. And as boring as all of this is, these are the things that are required to grow. And at least in the US, once you're above 50, you have to have benefits. It's legal because of Obamacare at least. And so we're putting this into graduate above 50. You want to get this stuff in place because you're going to need it either way. And if you think about, because I think about from a sales perspective, when someone goes to describe why they're staying at the company, they talk about their comp a little bit, but they're like, the benefits are great, right? Or they'll be like, I have great stock options. And so think about what people use to sell other people on why they're at a company. And oftentimes they're not weighted the same way you weight them as an entrepreneur, because by the very definition, you make different decisions than your team does. And so you want to weigh it based on their values, not yours.
And the next piece is advanced compensation. Okay, so advanced compensation, you can break it down into the 5 S's, okay? The first thing you're gonna do, right, because at this point in time, let's think about this. When we are getting in higher level talent, we need to make sure that we have different compensation plans that can be customized based on their level of experience and what you need them to do in the business so you can attract and retain them. That's really what advanced compensation does. Attracts people, retains people, either one or both. And so advanced compensation, the first thing you wanna do is set strategic goals. What do you want to achieve? Is it that you need to attract people or is it that you need to retain people? Okay. And then also defining whether your pay will be performance-based or market-driven, right? And so a lot of times when you're thinking about advanced compensation, you're thinking, am I just paying somebody market rate for the role, or am I going to make this performance-based based on what they do once they come in, right? So let's think about somebody that comes in and they are in a CS role, for example. So are we gonna pay them based on growth or retention or both, right? And so when they come in, understanding what's your strategic goal. Is it to drive performance and growth? Is it to drive retention? Is it to drive both? I would suggest not making it more than 2 things at this point in time because that's going to be too complex. So 2 at most, 1 is ideal. Here's the last thing I'll say on that. Nobody has complete autonomy over any one metric in your company, including you. And so a lot of people will say, well, sales has, yes, I understand, but I also need you to be incentivized to work with sales to affect retention by fixing the sales calls. So no one person has complete autonomy over any one metric, but in order to create advanced compensation, you want to figure out what metric they have the most control over that drives the most growth for your business based on the goals you have. The second thing you want to do is segment and structure the pay elements. Okay, so you want to think about salary, then you want to think about bonus or performance pay, and benefits to motivate the team to align with the business goals. So we've got base pay, we've got some kind of bonus incentive like I just talked about, and then we have benefits. All of those create compensation. Compensation is not just the paycheck somebody gets. Compensation is also the benefits they get. It's also the bonuses they get. And so you have to think about those as a package rather than individual things. You could lead with salary and be like, listen, you're gonna get really high base pay, but then have lower performance pay and okay benefits. Or you could say, you know what, you're gonna get paid jack shit. No, I'm kidding. You're gonna get paid not much, but we've got insane benefits and you have the opportunity to make a lot of money based on your performance. I will say a lot of businesses that are of this size lead with performance. So they actually say, you know what, we're gonna have really high earning potential, and then we're gonna have a mid-level salary, and we're gonna have good benefits. Neither of those by themselves are competitive, but the performance pay, they're like, holy crap, I could make up to this amount of money. That's usually good for businesses of this size because so much is driven by their individual performance. You only have between 20 and 50 people on your team, so it's really important they perform, and so you want it to be a competitive-like environment. The next thing you want to do is study market trends. So you want to look at the industry you're in to get benchmarks to make sure that you stay competitive and attract the right people. So what you pay, for example, if I hire somebody to be a sales rep in a lawn care business, they're going to make probably a third of what somebody selling enterprise level software makes, if not even a sixth. It's completely different ballpark. Now, why is that? It's because you're selling less expensive shit. And so think about it also in regards to if the thing you sell costs less money, then it's likely that the performance pay on those roles is going to be less. And so there's a lot of things that affect market pay. Another example of that would be if you look at getting a CFO for a private equity firm versus getting a CFO for a e-commerce business. You're going to pay way more money in the market for getting a CFO for a private equity firm because they need more skills. And so their skill is worth more to that business, and it's harder to find in the marketplace than for a B2C business with e-commerce, where it's like you just need them to count the money and make the P&L, where over here you have them handling $100 million transactions. Okay, so which skill is more valuable? It's going to be valued different based on the industry of the business. Then the next thing you're going to do is just set performance metrics. Define clear goals and incentives that tie to their performance plans, right? And so you can do this with benefits, but I would suggest at this point, you only are tying bonus pay and increases in salary to their performance plan. So what does that look like? It looks like being able to tie their career growth with their pay growth. So if you can clearly define someone's career path to grow in their role, and you can tie it to getting bumps in compensation or even increases in their percentage of their bonus of their performance pay, then those are things that can retain people, they can increase performance, and they can be really attractive to top talent when you're trying to get them in. And then the last thing you want to do is you want to start, share, and simplify. Roll out the plan with clear communication, get feedback from the person, right? And then adjust as your business grows. So each level of management is really going to have a template for the plan. So this is what I will tell you is like, you might have right now, you have your first level of leaders, right? Your managers, then you have your directors right now. It might be that this level, right? Your manager level, you're going to say, you know what? I think based on everything I just thought through, it makes sense that their bonus pay is, you know what? You can earn a bonus up to 25% of your salary. And that makes sense based on the market, based on the size and the growth goals. For your director level, it might be that you say, you know what? In this level, people can earn up to 75% of their salary in bonus. Those are things that you can do so that you can roll that out and then you can assess it every year. You can look at your bonus pools or your performance pay, your advanced compensation, and say, does this still fit my business goals? But this is a great place to start right now because at this point in time, you need it to attract and retain that talent.
So I'll just throw this in, which is you want to be clear, like when we're talking about advanced compensation, is that we want to think about these types of more advanced structures if there's a problem that occurs. And so either we're not able to get high quality talent coming in, or the talent that we have that's high quality is leaving to go to better opportunities. And so what I would caution you against is, oh, I'm going to watch this video and immediately make these super advanced compensation plans when you don't have a problem. You don't have an issue bringing talent in and the people that are coming in are staying. So if you don't have either of those problems, in some ways, you want to delay this complexity as long as humanly possible. But if you're like, we're putting the job rec out there, we can't get any bites on it, it's like, all right, we might have to raise our level here to get the kind of talent that we want. Obviously, we've already checked the job description. We know how to review resumes. We've already kind of done those basic things. We really just need to increase the offer.
And I would say that the biggest way that you can figure out that is studying the market. Like if you study benchmarks of your industry, you'll see if you're in the benchmark and you're already paying, then likely none of this needs to occur right now. When it comes to HR, we couldn't get higher level talent because they expected full compensation packages, right? And so we set up benefits, retirement, and advanced compensation plans so that we can get that talent and retain it, which brings us to finance.
Finance. All right, so finance is how you report and manage your money. And at level 6 for optimization, the constraint here is that you're spending money to grow, but you're not. And so money is missing and you're like, where's my return? You're like, we made these bets, we made these investments, and you're like, I'm not seeing, where's the money going, right? And so to graduate, you have to get more granular financial data. And this is called financial ops, where finance blends with operations so that you can get more, granular by product, understanding what are the gross margin per product, what's your LTV per product, things like that, where you get much more granular information on the business that you have. On top of that, you're going to want to start having a balance sheet for the assets that you have. Because if you keep spending money and you start buying stuff, you start buying equipment, start buying hardware for your team, all of a sudden it's like you have assets, right? You might have a building, you might have multiple buildings, you might have many lawnmowers, you might have studio equipment, you might have cameras. All of these things start to become assets because they are things that you own in the business. And so you want to account for that. Now, because for example, when a company is valued, you value it with the cash that's in there. You value it for the company itself in terms of its ability to generate cash flow. And then you add in the cost of the assets. And so if a business owns 5 buildings, then the cost of those 5 buildings should add into the overall enterprise value of the business. The last piece is that you want to begin making quarterly tax payments, which we already covered earlier. But this is like, you absolutely have to do this. Like, please do this. I think I included this twice, mostly because I forgot to do this at this point. And this is when I first started doing it. But I was like, what, we have to pay them quarterly? I thought we had to do it end of year. And so make sure you're doing that. And then you have to scale up AR and AP. So it's pretty common at this point that you have more accounts receivable, you have more vendors, you have more bills to pay. And so those systems need to scale. All right. And so let's talk about AR AP real quick. So not collecting is now unacceptable. So every AR person always has, like, they will pay for themselves. And so if you only have one, but that person's barely collecting all the amount of stuff that's overdue, then you like staff that up. It's a huge missed revenue opportunity. You cannot, and on the flip side for AP, you cannot get behind on payments to core vendors or partners. Like if you have e-commerce, for example, it's like you can't get behind on your 3PL. You can't get behind on buying more ingredients or buying, more inventory in the future. Like they're partners of yours more than they're even vendors. Like they're core to your business. And so we want to make sure that I always like to be every vendor's best customer. I want to make sure that we pay on time, that we do what we say we're going to do. And it's amazing how quickly you can lose leverage in a relationship with financial mishaps. So like if you pay late, I know immediately I'm not getting priority service. They don't like me as much anymore because sometimes that's how I feel with customers who do that to me, right? And so sometimes in your mind, it's like, oh, I didn't mean to. It's like, but it still affected their business. And so by all means, make sure that you staff those roles up because they are super important also to your reputation.
And one thing I just want to note is that when it comes to scaling up the AR, this doesn't need to be finance. So it can be that AR is a function of customer service. The only thing I'll say is this, which is like AR sits kind of between finance and customer service. What you want to make sure is that when people reach out to people to collect money, that it doesn't feel gross and like they're shaking people down, but it feels like a conversation, and you always ask before you assume. You ask to make sure, hey, did you know that you missed a payment? Hey, did you switch your credit card? Hey, always give them the benefit of the doubt. And what I've noticed is that when we've had AR sit under finance, it tends to be more aggressive and less empathetic. But when we have it sit under customer service, it tends to be more empathetic and less shake you down for every penny you got. And I think that the reality is you want them to not just pay you, but also remain a customer. And so to do that, it's best that it's a collaboration with finance and CS.
So the next piece is the balance sheet. I covered that already, but think about things like furniture, equipment, tech, IP, trademarks, domains, like acquisition.com. That itself is a trademark that has intrinsic value. The domain itself has value. Like there are probably some things in your business that actually do have real value that can trade on the marketplace. You want those things to be assets on the balance sheet. In terms of more granular financial data, this is probably the biggest one in terms of operational for the business, in terms of like what will actually make us more money. And so having a financial dashboard, I remember when we got a controller in and I had my first financial dashboard that I got to see finances across all department, meaning, okay, how much does it cost us per month for customer service? Well, how much does customer service affect churn? Or how much does customer service, has it reduced refunds? How much has it added to our collections ability? Okay, so each of these, remember I said in the beginning, the problem is that you're spending money and you're like, where's my return? When you have it more granular, you can see, oh, this department, it cost me this much money, and this is the return of this department. This department, it cost me this much money, and it brings me this return. The higher up you go, the more you begin to be an allocator of resources. You're an investor. You start to shift where you're prioritizing money, time, energy, humans in the business so you can get the best returns. And you can't do that without data. And so this is why you need to have a more operational finance person who understands how the money trickles down and comes back to the business. And if you don't have an operational CFO, they won't be able to make the tie. Like you should know this as an entrepreneur, and if you don't, like I would challenge you, can you clearly define how every department makes the business money? If you can't define it, they certainly won't be able to. But you want to make that connection so you can see what the true ROI is for the investment in the business. And so some of the things that I like to, when I remember when we got our first financial dashboard was like gross profit by product line. I was like, oh, okay, because sometimes gross profit is cross-departmental. Like we have some CS that's associated with it. We have some experience. We have some tech that's associated with that. And we want to see a blended idea of what's the gross profit on that product line. And then all of a sudden you get some amazing insights. You're like, oh my God, we really print money on this. And then your controller will be like, oh yeah, this is super profitable. Let's sell more of this. You're like, no shit. And so then all of a sudden you reinvest more, you allocate more resources there. And same thing here. This is gross profit, but then we have our LTV to CAC by product line. It's like, oh, this product line, not only does it make us more money, it also costs us not a lot of money to get these customers. And so again, this is just think more granular, top down, by traffic source, by product line, by customer set. And this just gives you a much better idea to make good investments in the business.
Really the theme here is you're moving from making decisions by intuition to making decisions by information. And that's the biggest shift that you're noticing is there's a theme across these departments. No more intuition. It's too big for you to make all those calls by gut. You've got to move into having the data.
Taxes, this is just a reminder to save up. So like if you know they're due quarterly, don't spend the money. Like save up and then be able to pay your taxes. Just believe me, sleep well at night. And then finally, I added this in because I thought, I was like, where does this really fit? But I told you the cybersecurity story. I would consider cybersecurity insurance. Like it is worth, like especially in this day and age, the AI stuff and the spoofing, it's getting so advanced. It's one of the most expensive types of insurance because it's so prevalent. And one of these big losses could put your business under. And so I would strongly recommend doing that. And also having an interruption of business insurance as well, which I didn't include there. But if you have some material thing that majorly affects your business, one of your vendors goes out of business, that would majorly affect your business. And so basically that insurance will cover all of your overhead during the time period it takes for you to find somebody else to replace that. So that could be like the insurance company covering 6 months of fixed costs in your business until you can get spun back up again. And so it's one of those things like I like to think, what are the things that will kill my business? And what little percent can I pay today to just make sure that I completely don't have to worry about those things? And so at this level for finance, at level 6, you're spending money to grow, but you're not making money and you're not growing. And so money's missing and you're like, where's my return? And so the answer to that is you have to scale up AR and AP. You have to get far more financial, granular into financial data. You need to start seeing, oh, we have put money, but it's in these assets that sit on my balance sheet. We have to start having a balance sheet because we've spent money on stuff that actually matters and has value. And we need to begin saving for tax payments on a quarterly basis and consider some of those higher level insurances where you think you have more exposure. What are the things that can kill my business and how can I prevent those things from happening? And so bottom line here, for this level, the constraint that we started with was that we were wasting time and resources on increasing workload. There's just more stuff everywhere. And so to graduate, we grow by doing everything better rather than doing more. We got tons of leads, we got more products, and so this is all about optimization. How do we get streamlined? How do we focus on the things that matter? How do we allocate resources to the places where we get the best returns? This is the theme of this level from going from 20 to 49. You grow by getting better rather than by trying to do more. And so at this level, we got to 20 to 49, so we're crossing into the 50 threshold, so 50 to 99. So now we're looking, okay, we're gonna grow from 50 all the way to 100 employees, and the theme of this next step is gonna be categorize. And if you're brand new, or this is the first video that you watched, and you're like, man, it would be so cool to have someone give me a breakdown like this for my business, we will give you a $100 million scaling roadmap customized to your business, absolutely free. And so below this video, there's a little button and you'll get a full breakdown of the phase that you just finished or should have finished and the things you need to watch out for because you may be ahead on 2 steps, but behind on 2 other steps. And so the things that you're behind on are probably gonna be things that as you get ahead will be increasingly larger risks. And so we said at the beginning, these are rules of thumb. Like sometimes you're advertising, you might be an amazing advertiser. You might be a level 9 for advertising, but you might be a level 3 for your HR, right? And so it's like, but that thing's gonna nip you in the butt. And when it does, it's gonna be nasty, right? And so it's like, okay, if we know we're behind on these things, we wanna look backwards, make sure we got all those tick and tied off, and then we wanna be able to look forwards and say, oh, these are the next problems that are coming. How do I prepare for those things now so I don't have to backtrack? And so if you want this, you can go below, click the button, enter your information, and we'll zip it off to you through the cyber worlds. And that being said, let's get to the next level.